A red and white shirt is pulled over a pair of raised arms, a finger points straight down the lens, and the words on the screen say it plainly. Here we go. Christos Tzolis is now an Arsenal player in every sense that matters, with the deal signed between the two clubs for a fee of €40 million, and Club Brugge already authorising him to complete his medical. This is not speculation anymore. This is a done deal, sealed, confirmed, and now simply waiting on paperwork and a stamp from the doctors. But here is the moment that matters more than the headline. While one deal was being finalised, another was already accelerating behind it. Arsenal were working hard on Morgan Rogers at the exact same time Tzolis was signing his name on a contract. Two winger deals, moving in parallel, in the same news cycle, within hours of each other. That is not how a club behaves when it is being cautious with its transfer budget. That is how a club behaves when it has decided, with total clarity, that this squad needs reshaping before a ball is kicked in August. Now think about what was genuinely on the line here. Arsenal are coming off a season where they won the Premier League and reached a Champions League final. That is not a squad that needs saving. But it is a squad that lost wit when Leandro Trossard was sold to Besiktas, and it is a squad whose most creative attacking talent, Bukayo Saka, could not even take the field for a single minute in the World Cup semi-final because of fitness problems that have followed him through the tournament. Add to that a serious back issue for William Saliba, one of the best defenders in the competition, and suddenly a champion squad has real specific gaps. Right back, centre-back cover, a rebuilt midfield, and at least one new winger. If those gaps are not filled properly and quickly, the champions of England could start the new season short in the exact areas that made them champions in the first place. If you want the full picture on every one of these deals as they move from rumour to reality, this is exactly the channel to be subscribed to. Hit that subscribe button now, because we are about to go through every single confirmed fact, every live negotiation, and every rumour that is circulating around this football club, one at a time, with nothing exaggerated and nothing invented. Let's go through this properly, story by story, exactly as it has been reported, and then I will give you my read on what it actually means. Tzolis, here we go. The message reads, Christos Tzolis to Arsenal, here we go. Deal signed between the two clubs for a fee of €40 million. Club Brugge authorised Christos for medical. New winger for Arteta, as Tzolis only wanted Arsenal, saying no to other clubs. Deal done. Arsenal also working hard on Morgan Rogers behind the scenes. My analysis. This is as final as football journalism gets before a club posts its own official announcement. A signed agreement between two clubs, a fee already settled, and a medical already authorised is not a stage where deals collapse. What stands out to me is the detail that Tzolis turned down other suitors to wait for Arsenal specifically. That tells you two things. First, the player identified Arsenal as his priority destination, which strengthens the club's hand in every future negotiation because word travels fast in this business, and agents notice when a player is willing to say no to other offers for one specific club. Second, it tells you Arsenal's recruitment team, led by Andrea Berta, is not just buying availability, they are buying genuine desire. A player who chose you is generally a safer investment than a player who settled for you. And notice the final line again, because it is doing a lot of quiet work. While this deal was closing, Rogers was already being worked on. That is not a club pausing to catch its breath. That is a club moving through its list with real intent. The numbers behind Tzolis. The message reads, Christos Tzolis' numbers in all competitions for Club Brugge last season. 52 matches, 22 goals, 29 assists. Arsenal have reached an agreement to sign him, according to David Ornstein. My analysis. Let's sit with those numbers for a moment, because they are exceptional for a wide player. 22 goals and 29 assists across 52 matches is a direct goal contribution in the vast majority of his appearances. That is not a squad player's output. That is the output of someone who was the focal point of his team's attack. What I find most telling is the assist number specifically. 29 assists tells me this is a player who creates as naturally as he finishes, which fits exactly what a club replacing Trossard's output and covering for an injury-prone Saka actually needs. He is not a one-dimensional runner, he is a genuine creative outlet. And the fact that this figure is being confirmed independently by David Ornstein, alongside the earlier confirmation of a signed deal, means we are dealing with two separate credible lines converging on the same conclusion. This deal is real. Aston Villa move for a new winger. The message reads, Aston Villa have started working on a new top winger after the Manzambi and João Gomez deals, while working on Estupiñán at left back. New winger targeted by Aston Villa as Arsenal are prepared to attack for Morgan Rogers. My analysis. This is where the Rogers situation starts to look serious rather than speculative. Aston Villa do not go into the market for a replacement winger unless they see genuine risk of losing their current one. Clubs do not preempt exits for players who are safe. The fact that Villa are actively lining up a replacement while also completing other business at Manzambi, João Gomes, and Estupinan tells me their recruitment department already expects Rodgers to be sold this summer, and they are preparing the squad to function without him. From Arsenal's side, this is a good sign, not a bad one. It suggests Villa are not digging in for a fight, they are planning around a departure, which usually means the negotiation, when it formally begins, moves faster and with less resistance than fans might expect. Breaking, Arsenal set to bid. The message reads, breaking, Arsenal set to bid for Morgan Rodgers after holding talks with both the player and Aston Villa. Club-to-club negotiations expected to accelerate following the World Cup. My analysis. Notice the specific language here. Talks have already happened with both the player and the club. That is important because it means Arsenal have not simply identified a target from a distance, they have already opened direct dialogue on two fronts at once. The phrase club-to-club negotiations expected to accelerate tells me the formal financial stage of this deal, the stage where fees are actually discussed line by line, has not fully begun yet. So where are we really? We are past the identification stage, past the informal contact stage, and heading into the formal stage. That is significant progress, but it is still short of an agreed fee, and fans should hold that distinction clearly in mind. Cerezo on Alvarez. The message reads, Atletico Madrid President Cerezo. Joan Laporta is a good friend and he already knows where Julian Alvarez is going to play next season. Let me insist, Julian is our player and will be our player next season. My analysis. I want to be very direct with you here, because this is a rumour and it needs to be treated as one. This is the club president of Atletico Madrid, on the record, stating in the clearest possible terms that Alvarez is staying. There is no ambiguity in that quote. He is not hedging, he is not leaving the door open, he is closing it. Whatever noise exists elsewhere linking Alvarez to Arsenal, the man who runs the selling club is publicly denying it in the strongest terms available to him. That does not mean interest from Arsenal does not exist somewhere in the background. But it does mean, as things stand, the player everyone wants to attach to Arsenal's midfield or attack is not walking out of Atletico Madrid without a serious change of circumstances that has not happened yet. Alvarez versus Rodgers. The message reads, Arsenal will reportedly bid for Morgan Rodgers and remain interested in Julian Alvarez. Which deal should they prioritise? The graphic compares their 2025-2026 league statistics. Alvarez recorded 29 appearances, 237 minutes per goal, 474 minutes per assist, 1.33 dribbles won per 90 minutes and 2.09 key passes per 90 minutes. Rodgers recorded 37 appearances, 328 minutes per goal, 547 minutes per assist, 1.04 dribbles won per 90 minutes, and 1.10 key passes per 90 minutes. My analysis. This is a useful side-by-side because it separates hype from output. Look at the minutes per goal figure. Alvarez needed 237 minutes to score, Rodgers needed 328. That is a meaningful gap in finishing efficiency. The same pattern holds in minutes per assist, dribbles won, and key passes, where Alvarez is ahead in every single category on this graphic. Statistically, by this specific dataset, Alvarez is the sharper attacking output of the two, but statistics do not exist in isolation from context. Rodgers played more minutes across more appearances in a Premier League that is widely regarded as more physically demanding and tactically varied than La Liga, and he did it as a wide player rather than a central one, which changes the nature of the chances he is involved in. What this graphic actually confirms for me is that Arsenal are not choosing between a good option and a bad option. They are choosing between two informed attacking players. And the truth is, given the Cerezo quote we just covered, one of those two is currently a great deal more realistic to sign than the other. The priority is Rodgers, the message reads, quoting Fabrizio Romano. In terms of incomings for Arsenal, I think Bruno Guimaraes could be the next one in midfield. Soon. Then Arsenal will sign a top winger. The priority is Morgan Rodgers, otherwise Barcola, but Liverpool are also pushing a lot for Barcola. My analysis. This confirms the pecking order inside the recruitment plan, straight from the source closest to these conversations. Guimaraes in midfield is described as coming soon, which is stronger language than we have seen for the winger deals. Then, specifically for the winger position, Rodgers is named as the outright priority, with Barcola positioned as the alternative if that move does not happen. What stands out to me is the warning attached to Barcola. Liverpool are also pushing hard for him. That tells me Arsenal are not treating Barcola as a fallback they can activate whenever they like. If Rodgers falls through, there is no guarantee Barcola will still be available, because a direct rival is competing for the same player at the same time. This is why the urgency around Rodgers matters so much. He is not just the preferred target, he may be the only clean route to a top-level winger this summer if Arsenal hesitate. Berta the Machine. The message reads, Andrea Berta is refusing to be pressured into overpriced transfers as Arsenal continue their summer recruitment drive. The sporting director is reportedly negotiating multiple deals for the same position at once, keeping Arsenal's options open. Berta will walk away from targets if the financial package does not represent value, strengthening Arsenal's negotiating position. Sources describe him as a machine whose ruthless approach could prove decisive in the most important phase of the transfer window. My analysis. This is, in my view, one of the most important pieces of context in this entire summer. It tells you the operating philosophy behind every single deal we have just discussed. Berta is running parallel negotiations for the same positions, which explains exactly why we are seeing Rodgers and Barcola mentioned together, and why Alvarez remains in the conversation even while Rodgers is the priority. This is not indecision. This is leverage. When a club is visibly willing to walk away, and visibly has more than one route to solving the same problem, it removes the selling club's ability to hold them hostage on price. The word machine is doing real work in that quote too. It suggests discipline over emotion, which, for a club that has been linked with plenty of ambitious names this summer, is a genuinely reassuring signal for anyone worried about reckless spending. Declan Rice's mandatory break. The message reads, legally, Declan Rice must take a 4-week break, starting Monday, before he can resume training at Arsenal. My analysis. This is confirmed and it is not optional, which is the key word here, legally. This is not a club decision Arteta can override out of impatience, and it is not a fitness call being made on the fly. It is a mandated recovery period. What this tells us practically is simple arithmetic. If the 4 weeks start this coming Monday, Rice is not walking back into an Arsenal training session until well into August at the earliest. Fans hoping to see their World Cup players straight back in Arteta's plans for the opening weeks of pre-season need to recalibrate those expectations right now. And Rice is the clearest, most concrete example of why. The Kenan Yildiz inquiry. The message reads, quoting David Ornstein, Arsenal inquired to Juventus about the possibility of signing Kenan Yildiz, but they were informed that the player is not for sale, prompting them to turn to other options. My analysis, I want to flag this one clearly as a closed door, not an open rumour. Arsenal made contact, Juventus gave a direct answer, and that answer was no. This is not a stalled negotiation, it is a rejected inquiry. What I find useful about this piece of information is what it reveals about the scope of Arsenal's search. They were exploring beyond the names we have already discussed, actively testing the market for elite attacking talent across Europe, not just in the Premier League. The fact that they moved on immediately after being told Yildiz was unavailable also reinforces exactly what we heard in the Berta screenshot. No hesitation, no lingering on a closed door, straight on to the next option. 5 positions to strengthen. The message reads, Arsenal are expected to strengthen in 5 key positions before the transfer window closes. Centre-back, full-back, midfielder, left winger, and centre-forward. Andrea Berta is reportedly working to secure deals for Christos Tzolis, Morgan Rodgers, and Bruno Guimaraes, while Julian Alvarez remains a target should an opportunity arise later in the summer. My analysis. This is essentially the master list, and it is worth comparing it against everything we have already covered. Winger is being addressed through Tzolis, and in progress, Rodgers. Midfield is being addressed through Guimaraes. That leaves centre-back, full-back, and centre-forward as the outstanding gaps, and we already know from earlier reporting why centre-back specifically is urgent, given William Saliba's injury situation. The framing around Alvarez here is important too, described as a target only should an opportunity arise later in the summer, which lines up precisely with the Cerezo denial we covered earlier. This is not a live negotiation, it is a patient, background interest that Arsenal are keeping alive in case circumstances change. Ben White staying put, the message reads. Arsenal were considering whether to sell Ben White, but he is unlikely to take a drop in level, despite interest from Everton and Crystal Palace. My analysis. This is a useful reminder that a summer rebuild is not only about arrivals. Arsenal apparently considered a sale here, which tells us the door was not fully closed on the idea internally. But the specific reasoning given, that White is unlikely to accept a drop in level, is really a statement about the gap in stature between Arsenal and the 2 interested clubs. Everton and Crystal Palace are both established Premier League sides, but neither currently offers the continental football or trophy prospects Arsenal have just delivered. Practically, this tells fans that unless a genuinely bigger club enters the conversation, White remains part of the plan for the coming season. Nwaneri trialled as a striker. The message reads, Ethan Nwaneri is in Marbella, Spain for Arsenal's optional pre-season summer camp and has been training well. Because most of the first team is still on holiday, he has gotten the opportunity to train as a striker in some drills. The club has still not made a decision on his future, with all options open, but it is likely he will start the season in North London before a final decision is made. My analysis. This is a genuinely interesting development, and I think it is worth reading carefully rather than over-interpreting. He is being tried as a striker specifically because the senior squad is thinned out by holiday schedules following the World Cup, which gives the coaching staff room to experiment with young players in unfamiliar positions without disrupting the first team shape. It is explicitly stated that no decision has been made on his long-term role or future, but the expectation is that he begins the new season in North London rather than heading out on loan. For a young player, being trusted with position flexibility during a pre-season camp is usually a sign the coaching staff see more than one route for him inside the squad, not less. Interest in Ezri Konsa. The message reads, quoting a source, Arsenal are interested in Aston Villa's versatile defender Ezri Konsa, who could fill in during William Saliba's expected absence. My analysis. I want to be precise with you here. This is described as interest, not an active negotiation, and it needs to be treated with that level of caution. But the logic behind the interest is sound and directly tied to something we already know is confirmed, Saliba's back problem and his expected months on the sidelines. Konsa's versatility is specifically highlighted, which matters because a squad missing a first-choice centre-back for an extended period benefits far more from a defender who can also cover full-back or step into a back three, rather than a single-position specialist. This is a rumour worth watching, not a deal worth assuming. Max Dowman staying home. The message reads, Arsenal are adamant that Max Dowman will not be going out on loan next season. With Saka likely to need a good long rest after the World Cup, will we see Max Dowman given more responsibility and game time in the first team next season? My analysis. This is confirmed as a club decision, not a rumour, and the word adamant is doing real work here. It signals this is not a soft preference that could change with a good loan offer. It is a settled position. The reasoning connects directly back to Saka's fitness problems throughout the World Cup, which we have already established were serious enough to rule him out of the semi-final entirely. If Saka genuinely needs an extended recovery period once he returns, Arsenal keeping a talented academy winger in the building rather than sending him out on loan gives Arteta an internal emergency option, rather than leaving that width covered purely by new signings. A busy July ahead. The message reads, quoting Fabrizio Romano, It is going to be a busy July for Arsenal. It has been a quiet June. Arsenal are Premier League champions and Champions League finalists. They wanted to take a minute to plan for everything. Arsenal will be busy, busy, busy. My analysis. I think this quote is the perfect frame for everything we have just walked through. It directly explains why June looked slow to outside observers, while July has suddenly produced a signed winger, an advancing winger negotiation, a midfield target, defensive interest, and multiple background inquiries all within days of each other. A club that had just won the league and reached a European final was never going to rush into panic business in the days immediately after the season ended. What we are watching now is the result of that planning period turning into action, all at once, across every position that needed addressing. The bronze medal delay. The situation facing Arsenal right now is one of timing, not talent. 15 Arsenal players travelled to North America for this summer's World Cup, and the club is now down to its final three still involved as Spain and Argentina prepare to contest one of the most anticipated finals in recent memory. For Mikel Arteta, watching from home has not been comfortable. Declan Rice and Bukayo Saka have both struggled with fitness problems throughout the tournament, with Saka unable to play a single minute in the semi-final. William Saliba has come away with a back issue serious enough that it could genuinely alter Arsenal's transfer plans in the weeks ahead. The specific complication now is this. Rice, Saka, Noni Madueke, and Eberechi Eze cannot simply fly home following England's semi-final defeat, because England must first play in the bronze medal match, a fixture nobody involved actually wants to play. England manager Thomas Tuchel said it plainly, speaking on behalf of both his own squad and the French players they face, that none of them want to be involved in this match, and that England will have one less day of recovery than France, yet will still approach it professionally. Because the expected starters are unlikely to feature heavily in a match with no real stakes, it is fringe players who are most likely to be involved, meaning Eze and potentially Madueke are the two Arsenal names most exposed to extra minutes in a game the club would rather they avoided entirely. My analysis: the consequence of this delay is very concrete and worth spelling out clearly for planning purposes. Players are entitled to a minimum of 3 weeks off, which pushes the earliest realistic return date for these individuals to Monday the 10th of August. That single date has a ripple effect across the entire preseason calendar. It rules them out of the first 3 preseason friendlies against Girona, Real Betis, and Borussia Dortmund. It rules them out of the fixture against Como on August 12th. It even puts the FA Community Shield against Manchester City on August 16th in genuine doubt, with the specific concern being that Saka and Rice in particular may need recovery time well beyond that date, given how much football and how much physical strain they have carried through an entire World Cup campaign. For a club that has just spent July building an ambitious squad through the transfer market, the harsh reality is that several of its most important existing players will barely have trained with the group before the competitive season resumes. The £70 million warning. The reality of William Saliba's injury is now becoming clearer, and it is not a small concern. He was forced off during France's World Cup semi-final defeat to Spain, replaced by Maxence Lacroix, and French outlet L'Équipe has reported that likely surgery on the issue would keep him out for 4 to 5 months. That is a serious length of absence for one of the best defenders in the competition, and it leaves Arsenal in a genuinely difficult position, because Christian Mosquera is currently the only fit specialist cover available at centre-back. One name being floated as a potential solution is, somewhat ironically, the very player who replaced Saliba on the pitch for France, Crystal Palace's Maxence Lacroix. He was trusted ahead of Ibrahima Konate by manager Didier Deschamps, and he has adjusted impressively to English football since arriving from the Bundesliga. His underlying numbers back that up. He ranks in the top 17% of the Premier League for duels per 90 minutes, the top 13% for aerial duels won, the top 15% for defensive contributions, and the top 23% for tackles. In possession, he is above the positional average for centre-backs in successful dribbles and touches in the opposition box, and he completes 88.2% of his passes, a figure that reflects his willingness to attempt progressive, riskier passes into forward areas. Crystal Palace's own London sports editor described Lacroix as a Rolls-Royce of a defender, someone comfortable on the ball but never afraid to compete physically, and pointed to the fact that he replaced Saliba himself in a World Cup semi-final as proof of the trust top-level managers already place in him. My analysis. Here is where the story turns from admiration to hesitation. Crystal Palace have reportedly placed a £70 million valuation on their 26-year-old centre-back, and that fee alone is described as likely to put off most suitors, Arsenal potentially included. Spending that heavily on a second major centre-back addition in the same window Arsenal are already committing significant funds to Tzolis, and pursuing Rodgers and Guimaraes is a genuinely difficult financial balancing act. The alternative being floated is a cheaper route entirely, a free agent option such as John Stones. What is not in question, based on everything we now know about Saliba's expected 4 to 5 month absence, is that Arsenal cannot simply leave this position unaddressed and hope Mosquera carries the load alone. Something has to give, whether that is the transfer fee, the specific target, or the format of the deal. Berta means business with the Tzolis deal essentially finished. Attention has fully turned to the next wide attacking addition, and everyone inside the club already understands that Morgan Rodgers is the top target. Arsenal have already sold Leandro Trossard to Besiktas, and Gabriel Martinelli's long-term future remains unresolved, which only sharpens the urgency around bringing in fresh attacking quality on the flanks. PSG's Bradley Barcola has been described as open to a move to Arsenal, but the key detail here is that Arsenal are not actively pursuing him at this time. Fabrizio Romano was direct about this in a recent video update, stating plainly that there are no active talks for Barcola, and that the winger Arsenal genuinely want to add remains Morgan Rodgers. According to that same update, conversations on the player's side are advanced. There are no issues over personal terms, with only a few minor details left to clarify, and Arsenal are described as ready to attack the deal. Club-to-club talks with Aston Villa are also expected to begin soon. My analysis. What I find most revealing in this specific piece of reporting is the phrase personal terms are almost agreed. In football transfer language, that is a significant marker of progress, because personal terms, wages, length of contract, bonus structures are traditionally one of the more time-consuming parts of any deal to finalise. If that side of the negotiation is already close to resolved, the remaining obstacle is purely the fee and structure agreed between Arsenal and Aston Villa, which is a more mechanical and often faster part of any transfer to complete once both parties are motivated to do business. And they clearly are motivated, because this same reporting confirms Arsenal are simultaneously working on Julian Alvarez and Bruno Guimaraes in the background. Whatever hesitation existed around Arsenal's transfer activity in June has clearly disappeared entirely. Andrea Berta is running multiple fronts at once, and the club's channel of communication with Morgan Rodgers personally appears to be the most advanced of any current winger target on their list. That is the complete picture as it currently stands. One winger signed and awaiting his medical. One winger with personal terms almost agreed and club talks about to begin. A midfielder described as coming soon. A striker inquiry that was firmly rejected. A defensive crisis building around William Saliba that could still shape the biggest transfer decision of the summer. And a group of England internationals who will not even be back in training until deep into August because of a football match nobody wanted to play. If you want to stay ahead of every single one of these stories as they move from rumour to reality, make sure you are subscribed, turn on notifications, and I will see you in the next one.